Well, I appreciate the invitation from Jeff to present here and talk today about a topic I find very interesting, rare disease research. I'm going to follow the lead of my senior collaborator, John Kissel, and stay right in the weeds and really describe my experience of starting really from nothing, building a collaborative relationship, and sort of describe how we did it. Not that it's the greatest or perfect way to do it, but it's worked at some level, and maybe that'll help somebody else. So if you ask people in the field, we've been doing this since 2003. I met Haifeng and we started working together. And for the longest time, you would hear people refer to Cataland and Wu like they were within the field sort of the same person. And if I would show up at a meeting, they'd ask where Wu was, and if they'd ask where I was. And in June, I had to stand in for Haifeng to give a talk, and I started out the presentation by sort of jokingly introducing myself as Cataland and not Wu, because sometimes we get each other mixed up, because as you can see, there's a remarkable resemblance between the two of us. The work we've done is really in a rare disease, several ultra-orphan diseases, acquired TTP, AHUS. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but these are rare diseases, benign diseases, if you will, that result in the formation of small clots throughout many organs of the body. Well, excuse me. Can have some devastating complications, and all can be fatal diseases. It can affect young and old, from pediatric patients to the elderly. We think we've done a good job over 13 years, like Dr. Kissel described, learning the hard way of how to do things. We've built a network of patients. We have patient support group meetings twice a year. We interact and help to lead clinical trials, as well as the major advocacy organization, Answering TTP, which is an international organization. But we think we've been successful in some of the publications. Haifeng's work patented a methodology to measure an enzyme level, which is now instrumental really in confirming the diagnosis of TTP. We've been funded by a rare disease, orphan disease grant from the FDA. And this is where we learn lessons of the difficulty of patient accrual. And it's certainly not an easy thing. This is a quote that I probably wasn't supposed to see. It was one of my letters for my promotion. But when it comes across your desk, you sort of can't help but look at it. And one of my colleagues, who actually is my mentor, wrote this about me, but meaning the both of us, that they accomplished more together than they could have individually. And I think that says a lot about our work together. So how do we start working together? It's a very good question. I had no idea how to find a mentor. I knew from my colleagues in leukemia and cancer research the importance of a laboratory correlate. I was a clinical investigator. I had a very big interest in acquired TTP, was seeing all of the patients, getting clinical experience, but knew I needed the laboratory correlate work to make things successful, to really make people believe your clinical observations. I failed once at a collaboration, a colleague from Pittsburgh. We initiated things that just didn't go very far. I then bumped into Haifeng over a patient care. So we're in apheresis, describing a patient, talking about her what to do. Knew nothing about him. He was recruited here to do cancer research by Mike Caligiuri. I was recruited here to do leukemia research. Didn't work out for both of us. We started talking and sharing our experiences. And we quickly started to realize we had some shared experiences which are helpful, but also some mutual areas where we can collaborate with each other. Turns out at the time I was looking for a laboratory collaborator. Haifeng was looking for a new avenue to apply his laboratory expertise. He was doing proteomics work, having some difficulty getting funding, patients. He was a blood banker. He saw a lot of TTP patients and knew this is a great source of patients, biological samples to do correlative work. So when we met, it was sort of a natural collaboration that we didn't realize was starting, but certainly started. We didn't intend to get this far. I don't think we thought we might. But what made it work? And I think the obvious was hard work. Certainly it was hard work. You got to scrape by with very little funding. And many of you probably understand when you need the help, whether it's mentoring or financial, nobody really is willing to give it to you because they don't quite trust you. They don't know who you are. Once you establish yourself and you don't need the help, everybody is more than willing to give you funds and help you out. So you have to learn to scrape by. I had some startup funds. Haifeng had some startup funds, and we made it work. I was the study coordinator. I was the study nurse. My kids used to open up a cooler, a little styrofoam cooler in my back seat, and once in a while there'd be some plasma samples in it that I was running back and forth from my clinic to his lab. we sort of worked hard and pressed on. I think one key thing is common and complementary areas of expertise. We both had a similar goal, a similar interest. We overlapped in the middle, but certainly he more the laboratory, I more the clinical. One of our patient group meetings, my mentor, James George, came from Oklahoma, and I should add he's an Ohio State graduate. First time he met Haifeng, he was impressed at how all the patients at this meeting knew Haifeng. They said, Haifeng's a pathologist, how do they know him? I said, they just know him. That's sort of how we did things here at Ohio State. So you have to have common goals. You have to have, I think, an important point I would say is benefit to both parties, no matter what you're doing. If each individual doesn't think they're going to benefit in some way, it's not going to go anywhere, no matter how great the goal might be. And we'll talk about that more here in another couple slides, I think. It's important to have a collegial and friendly working relationship. You've got to be honest with each other and be able to say anything to each other. And I think we've always done that. A lot of cooperation where you go back and forth with different goals of different ends with a common goal in mind. But persistence, I think, is the key here. And I'll come back to this as well. We call doing something that Haifeng used to talk about a lot. So I think, as I've already mentioned, you have to understand your goals. What do you need before you go looking for somebody? I did it haphazardly and bumped into him and got lucky. But if you're looking for somebody, what do you really need? Do you need a laboratory collaborator? Do you need a clinical collaborator to bring you patient samples to give you access to do this translational work? Is it going to be an effective relationship? It's human nature. Everybody has to feel like this is important. If both parties don't feel it's important, like my first attempt at a collaboration, it's just not going to go very far. It's just not going to get off the ground. So everybody has to get something out of it. And this is a lesson I've learned and applied to this consortium development I'll talk about at the end. And I would also tell you to look hard where you already are. You might find your own Haifeng close by. So we really don't realize who's working with us till you start talking, going to different research meetings, and discussing some shared experiences. And as I've also found from the very get-go, finding a mentor for a rare disease is not an easy thing. My mentor happens to be in Oklahoma, even though he grew up in Columbus. We've also got mentors who've helped out in some of the complement work in Denver, Colorado, as well as around the world. So don't be afraid to look far away. With the internet and the telephone, it's really not that hard to connect. This is one of my favorite quotes, and I think it applies well here. You don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than your friend. And I think you can see that here in the slide. This guy's going to have some problems, I think. The point of the slide is many collaborations spend a lot of time talking. You decide what you're going to describe. You write this protocol up. But at the end of the day, nothing happens. And Haifeng used to say, he said, too much of this, not enough of this. And we'd be in meetings together, international meetings, and he would look over at me, and he would just kind of do this across the table, and I knew exactly what he meant. So I think it's important. One thing we learned is you've just got to start by doing something. You've got to collaborate at some level. What that will do is it lets you learn about your collaborative relationship, how good it is, what needs to be changed. It's not going to be perfect what you do, but it's a start. And once you do something, people look at you a lot differently. A lot of people will talk about doing things, but once you actually do something, they look at you a bit different. But I think what it really does is serve to improve the confidence and trust of your collaborative relationship, whether it's somebody you're with here at the university or someone across the country or across the world. So you just got to get something done, which is the key. After that, it gets a lot easier. And that's really what I talked about when we set off to fund this United States TMA. So thrombotic microangiopathy is an expensive name that covers all of these conditions. But my colleagues around the world have for years had these networks within their countries. Where in the US, we've always had individual sites struggling to do research on their own, which didn't quite make much sense to me. So trying to leverage some of our experience, our relationships around the country and around the world, we established this consortium along many sites across the US. And you can see some of the sites listed, they're already starting to grow. Focusing also on, again, this complementary areas of expertise. So Marshall Mazeppa is a junior faculty from UNC, but has a lot of expertise in sort of database management and things like that. I've partnered with him to try to put this together. So where do you get the funds to put this together? our relationship, my relationship with a pharmaceutical company doing research in this rare disease. And I have many such meetings with them and discussions and let them know, hey, if you give us some support to put this network together, we can deliver you patients for your clinical trial. So just as it's a collaborative between Haifeng and myself and us and other national institutions, you'll see the same thing with pharmaceutical companies. So when you tell them, we can give you 10 sites for this rare disease, you don't have to go spend money looking for people, they're very much appreciative. They were very generous and gave us a very large unrestricted donation to set this up. It's a win-win. It comes back to the same thing. Everybody's got to get something out of this. They get patients for their clinical trial. They'll get the experience of long-term follow-up. We'll get the funds to support this network of pooling clinical data, banking biological samples, which is a very important part of the research, is what we've done here at Ohio State, but also forming a research consortium for which to do research with rare diseases. So several companies have approached me about angles of therapeutics, and I tell them I'd love to talk with you. Just to let you know, we've got this consortium set up that we can bring it to if you want to, and it obviously gets everybody's attention. So again, it's a win-win for both. They support the consortium, patient outcomes improve, they get their patients. Again, everybody has to have an incentive to participate, and everybody has talked about these networks before in TTP research. What we did differently was a couple things that I've already talked about. We gave everybody a reason to do it. So by shipping patient samples, they'll get some correlative testing they can get free of charge for their patients to help clinical outcomes, clinical treatment of their own patients. We're banking samples where sites can't do that. And there are many sites on here. My colleague at Washington University, Evan Sadler, is a bench researcher looking for correlative translational work. This gives him access to these biologic samples from patients around the country. So it's set up as a win-win for everybody. Again, everybody needs to get something out of this to be successful. And as you've heard already, rare diseases especially, it's a small world. Be collegial. To quote some of my colleagues, don't be an ass. You will see this over and over again. I tell the fellows, if you're a nice guy, they'll remember it for a long time. If you're an ass, they're never going to forget it. So by being collegial and kind, many opportunities will come your way later down the road. I promise you, I think we've seen that. So a quick picture of some of the people in the lab who do a lot of this work, all of the laboratory correlate work. My friend and colleague, Haifeng Wu, my mentor, James George from the University of Oklahoma, who's been with us from the beginning in 2003 and been incredibly helpful. So with that, I'll stop and show you a picture of Amelia Island in the morning, which is not a bad place. Thank you very much for your attention.